welcome to Crime Bytes, the show where we talk about some truly bizarre and disturbing crime cases. My name is Liz, and today is True Crime Tuesday. So, how many of you have at some point in your lives done something bad to cover up something else bad that you did, to cover up something even worse, only to have it all blow up in your face and find yourself in one heck of a situation that you can't get out of? I think most of us have to some extent, but the case that we're going to talk about today, well, buckle up because it takes this concept to the extreme. But before we get into that, if you're looking for something fun and unique to celebrate spring with, may I suggest heading to my Etsy. I'll leave that link in the description. I've got some one-of-a-kind butterfly wing jewelry on there that they're really just perfect for spring. I know I've said this before as well, but butterflies symbolize transformation, rebirth, and spiritual growth. So if you're feeling that, head over to my Etsy and check those out. Today's story is nothing at all along these lines, though. Our story takes us back to Ohio or northern Florida, and it's really living up to its reputation in today's story. Let me tell you. Anyways, let's meet Asuncion or Susie Avila-Villa. Susie was a single mother with 4 small children living on public assistance, and she wasn't having the best day. She had quite the dilemma, it seemed. When you receive public assistance because you have dependents, you need to fill out a lot of paperwork, as you should. You never know when someone might be using your child's social security number to get a break on their housing. But that wasn't the problem that Susie was having today. They wanted or needed the identity of the father of her youngest, Israel, so that she could keep the public benefits that she was already receiving. In fact, they were going to have her come in. They wanted the father named, and they even wanted a DNA sample from Israel, which seemed a little crazy to me to do that. And I don't know, did they do that in Ohio? I went down a small rabbit trail, but I couldn't find a clear answer. Family court, different DNA testing sites, but anyhow, they wanted to know who the father was, and that was a problem. My understanding is that the state would seek child support, if possible, for the child, if they were also providing benefits for said child. Let me know if you know more about that. But that does seem fair. But if Susie put Israel's father's name on the paperwork, it might come back to bite her because she had no business having that sort of relationship with Israel's father. And if they were actually going to take Israel's DNA as well, there might not be any avoiding things coming out, and Susie didn't want that, so she was sitting there trying to figure out her next move when Israel started to cry again, and he had been crying all day, and Susie was just at the point where she didn't know if she could take it anymore. Then just a couple days later, on August 24th of 2009, the following 911 call would come in.
I was calling because last night, one of my boyfriends started to up one of my sons, and he hadn't came back yet. This is last night.
He has your son, with him?
Yeah, he has my son, and I haven't seen him last night.
And what relation is your boyfriend, you said?
We were dating in the past, but we haven't seen each other for all, I could say 9 months, 8 months, and he has my newborn.
And if you can't quite understand that, it's Susie, and she's telling the dispatcher that the night before she let one of her ex-boyfriends take her sons out to show him to some of his friends, and he never brought him back. The police would respond and come interview Susie, but right away they got the feeling that something was off. So much so that they would end up getting a warrant and confiscating the trash bins that she had kind of around back on the side of her apartment building. The next day, investigators would show up and inform Susie that they found baby Israel, and instead of being overjoyed and grateful like you would expect, Susie would react about the exact opposite, almost like she was scared and defeated, because they found baby Israel in the trash that they had been sorting out from behind her apartment at the police station, and he was wrapped in a trash bag and buried in what was referred to as a gang-style burial with other trash around him so that hopefully he wouldn't be found. Thankfully, he was, and she would tell them that she messed up, clearly. She would say she had shaken him too hard when he was sitting in his bouncy seat and crying. And she had been frustrated, and in an effort to quiet him when all of her other efforts were failing, she shook him. And unfortunately, she shook him so hard that he suffered what is known as shaken baby syndrome. Shaken baby syndrome is exactly what it sounds like. It's a serious brain injury that results from forcefully shaking an infant or toddler. Bad stuff. It's an abusive head trauma, and babies have weaker neck muscles and they can't even support the weight of their heads. So when they are forcefully shaken, their brains move forcefully along the inside of their skulls, which can result in bruising, swelling, and bleeding. And shaken babies can suffer an array of negative consequences, such as learning difficulties, but obviously death is the most severe and unfortunate of these consequences. And we're not talking bouncing a child on your lap or your knee when they're little, or a mistake like a fall. We're talking picking up the baby and violently shaking it, like in a rage or out of frustration. The most common instances of shaken baby syndrome occur when a caregiver is frustrated that their child won't stop crying. And that's exactly what Susie told the police had happened with her in Israel. Obviously, she was upset, and obviously she did not handle it right when she put her son in a trash bag and attempted to call 911 on her ex-boyfriend. But these things do happen, right? I mean, it's not the most unheard of thing, even though it's really tragic. The problem, though, was that Israel's skull was crushed, and that's more extreme than shaken baby syndrome, and the police were still determined to get to the bottom of what really happened. So in addition to having his skull crushed, which was ultimately determined to be his cause of death, Israel had abrasions, bruises, and other broken bones. And he also only weighed 9 pounds, which obviously was concerning. It seems that for a child who was 35 days old at that point and born at 8 pounds 13 ounces, that maybe he should have weighed a little bit more than that. Obviously, there could have been other factors at play, but the main factor that is and was standing out was neglect. Something definitely felt off, and so they continued to investigate. And the next obvious question that they needed to answer was, who was Israel's father? And that's what takes this case to a whole nother level of wrong, because Israel's father turned out to be a 14-year-old boy that Susie had had over to her place at least twice the previous fall. When she received the notice that she was going to have to submit Israel to DNA testing to keep her benefits, she snapped, literally, and decided to kill him so that she wouldn't get in trouble for having sex with a minor. In Ohio, the age of consent is 16, and Susie was 25 at the time. At first, when I was looking at this case, I was just like, what, how, why, and I really just could not wrap my head around this, no on every level. And then something ended up clicking, and if Susie was successful and they didn't find Israel's body. There would have never been a DNA test, and her rape of that 14-year-old would have never gotten out, and she could have stayed on her public assistance with her other children. If her plan had worked, it would have been terrible, but it made sense in the sickest possible way. And with poor 35-week-old Israel left as collateral damage no matter which way you look at it. That poor baby. And she would claim that she was insane, of course, and that she had bipolar disorder and was taking medication for it. But she was ultimately deemed competent to stand trial, which is great. There was definitely a clear thought process here, even if it was completely deranged. She would be charged with aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, and gross abuse of a corpse. And when all was said and done, she ultimately was also indicted with unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. So she didn't even escape that by killing her son, which this story is just so sad in so many ways. She also didn't choose to talk to the social workers at all about the welfare of her other children while this was going on, which isn't surprising, and her sister is raising them now. She would end up pleading guilty to the aggravated murder of her son to avoid the possibility of the death penalty, which was on the table. She would receive life in prison without the possibility of parole, and she gave up the right to an appeal with this plea. Her other children are being raised by her sisters. So this obviously opened up the conversation that has become more and more popular lately, female pedophiles. Specifically, there have been so many teachers or other women in power positions sleeping with their students or what have you. It's interesting as well because we're tightening up our sentencing for these crimes. In general, though, they tend to receive lighter sentences and not be taken as seriously as the same crimes committed by male offenders, which I don't know. What do you guys think about that topic? Should they be treated the same, or is there some element of correctness to the whole boys will be boys ideology? I think they should be treated exactly the same as their male counterparts personally. Anyhow, today's real fact with Scoot Dog is going to be, if you mess up, own it, and don't try and cover it up by doing something worse. I know this is such an extreme example of this, but it's definitely the message in there, or one of them. Do the right thing, own your mistakes. I know it's way easier said than done, especially in cases extreme like this, but for today's positive note, we're going to highlight Save the Children. Save the Children is an organization that works to impact some of the problems that today's children face. Some of the big ones that they target are access to regular meals and a decent education. Save the Children teams up with local partners in various locations to tackle these issues. Last year, they actually responded to 121 emergencies in 63 different countries. They believe that every child deserves a future, and they work to show it. Stories like today's can be really discouraging for a variety of reasons, but if you are able to help programs like Save the Children who are out there trying to make a difference, maybe one day we'll hear less and less stories that are this terrible. I mean, that would be great. But anyways, if you would like to learn more or to donate, visit savethechildren.org, and as always, I'll leave that in my description as well. All right, guys, we've got one more week in May, and I've got another mother on my radar. We'll see, though. I don't want to name names yet because I haven't really scratched the surface too much, but we'll see. I'll be back with another one next week either way, and I hope you all have a fantastic week. And as always, please stay safe out there. Bye.